Hi there. My name is Brian. I live in Boulder, Colorado. That's a town, thank you. It's a town where they legalized marijuana and no one noticed a difference. So further, yes, this is a topic, going further. What provides us with success and happiness and well-being is a topic that's fascinated me for the last couple of years. I could talk for hours about it, but I have 12 minutes, which is a lot harder, so let's get going. Yes, most of you may know me as the guy who started Copyblogger. That's a publication that helps people with content marketing, copywriting, basically everything related to effective online marketing. So naturally, we're not talking about any of that stuff today. The short version of my long story is that 17 years ago, I quit my job as an attorney to write on the internet. Tell your mom that one. But since that time, I've founded or co-founded 9 businesses, 8 of which have been successful. Only the first one failed. That was my starter startup. And I'm now the CEO of a company called Rainmaker Digital. It's a completely bootstrapped company that grew out of the blog and will do about $12 million in revenue this year. Okay, so the question that I really want to address today is what motivates us? What makes us happy? What leads to a happy, successful life? And that question grew out of another question, which was, Brian, what the hell's wrong with you? I found that I was never content for long. No matter what I was able to achieve, it was always about the next thing. And I would always feel my most intense joy, at least in a business sense, when I was starting something new or going further with a project or taking it to the next level. And as you might have guessed, I didn't think that was a good thing. I thought I was just particularly cursed with human nature, with dissatisfaction. So I have a background in psychology, and I started looking into it, revisiting these topics. And I found that, believe it or not, I'm actually kind of well-adjusted in this area, which I know is a shock to anyone who knows me well. And it really comes down to self-determinism. If you've read Dan Pink's book, Drive, he talked about intrinsic motivation, internal motivation, doing things that we want to do. And he talked about it in the context of motivating people at work, but it applies in all areas of life. So we're motivated by a sense of purpose in multiple aspects of our lives. We aim to constantly level up, whether it be woodworking or entrepreneurism or whatever the case may be. These are the things that we seek to master. And then we also, this is an important one, seek autonomy and control in our pursuits. They have to be our goals in order to be fulfilling to us in a way that leads to a happy, successful life on our own terms. It's a very important point. So this is a picture of Long's Peak in Colorado. It's one of 58 14ers. A 14er is a 14,000 foot or higher mountain. And we crazy Coloradans tend to like to climb all 58 of these as a project or goal, if you will. Why? I don't know. They're there. You don't have to ask anyone. But this is something I'd like to do. How long is it going to take me to do it? I was supposed to start this summer and didn't, so that's a problem. But let's say that I climb one a week during the summer months when the weather is good. That would take me about 5 years. During my 5th summer, I would climb the 58th one, and that's fine. It's not like I get a prize for going faster, right? It's just something to do. So there's 3 things that I want you to think about and take away to apply within the context of whatever particular journey you're going on right now, because that's what matters. It has nothing to do with my journey. It's all about you and what makes you happy. First thing I want to talk about are personal projects. So how many people know Chris Guillebeau? A few people. He is an author. He's written several books. His most recent one is called The Happiness of Pursuit. And it's all about going on quests, these personal projects that we do just to do them. Chris had a quest that he wanted to visit every country in the world, and he did. It took a while, as you might expect, but he accomplished that quest. His book is filled with all these inspiring anecdotes of people who have literally transformed their lives by doing these quests or personal projects. It could be writing a book, it could be starting a company, it could be climbing 58 big-ass mountains, right? It's your project. About the same time as Chris's book came out, another book came out by a guy named Dr. Brian Little. He's a professor of psychology at Cambridge, and he did some groundbreaking research on personality while at Harvard. And he identified 3 driving forces that influence who we are from a personality standpoint. Those are biogenic, sociogenic, and idiogenic. Biogenic are genetic factors that influence who we are, how we act. The idea that we're a blank slate at birth is not accurate. A lot of how you are is baked into you in your genes. Very difficult to shake that. Sociogenic is the cultural factors that we grew up in that conditioned us. A little more flexibility here. We all rebel against our upbringing or our culture or social constructs in our own little ways, but we were so influenced by the culture we grew up in. Most of what we do in that realm, we just operate that way without realizing it. And then finally, there's idiogenic traits. Now, just to clarify, these are not personality aspects that make you think voting for Donald Trump is a good idea. They're also known as free traits. These are the things we choose to do ourselves. And the interesting thing about the research, and which ties into the more anecdotal approach of Chris's book, is that what you do, what you choose to do, is who you become. So choose carefully. Second thing I want to talk about is process over results. So we're talking a little bit about mountains here, so I'll share a story from 1996 when a group of people were trying to summit Mount Everest. And every indication that these people had that day was to turn back. The weather was bad. The time of day was bad. They had personnel issues. They should have turned back. Yet their goal of reaching the summit was so strong that they ignored all of those warning signs. And guess what? They made it. They just didn't make it down alive. So this was in the book Into Thin Air. It was a tragic loss of life on Mount Everest because of rigid adherence to a goal. The research in this area is really interesting because when people rigidly adhere to achieving a goal, they tend to lie, they tend to cheat, and they definitely engage in short-term thinking. But they're clearly not focusing on the process of what they're doing. They're focused on the prize. And what happens? Number one, you're not happy doing it. Number two, you get the prize, and what happens? It goes away. It's not that great. You got to go chase another prize. Don't chase prizes. Do what you want to do, and then whatever the benefits of that process come to you, then great. I don't know any entrepreneurs who are in it for the money directly. That's not what gets us out of bed. So if you listen to any motivational speaker or author, they're like, you have to set goals, and then you create a plan, and then you persevere, and you don't stop until you get to that goal. But other research shows that in the field of entrepreneurism, seasoned serial entrepreneurs will scoff at that idea. It's more like jazz or surfing. There's no plan. There's a sort of a plan, but the map is not the territory. The plan is not reality. You've got to start, observe, and then adapt. Some of the things Darren just touched on. And what you'll find is that when you see disaster coming, you can make that pivot. But the more interesting thing in my experience has been that it's not disaster that you see, it's a different opportunity, a better one. And you have to keep your eyes open in order to improvise and go for that. Process over results. And then finally, who's writing your script? If I told you that who you think you are, your sense of self, is an illusion, would you agree with me? You might think I'm heading over into the realm of Buddhist thinking, but it's really neuroscience. That Buddha guy was way ahead of his time, apparently. There's no place in your brain where you are created. Really, your brain takes memories and beliefs and conditioning and thoughts and in a way, puts it together that seems very cohesive and tangible to you when it's really not. Cognitive neuroscience Bruce Hood says, what we really are is a story. We're a narrative that our brain creates in order to have coherence. And when you realize that what you are is a story, that's pretty cool, especially if you realize that you can change the story. You can certainly change the way you perceive about what happens to you in that story. So in the field of psychology, we have 3 stages that we go through: actor, agent, and author. We're actors when we're children, right? We're playing roles. Our parents want us to act a certain way. Our teachers want us to act a certain way. Institutions, peers, etc. As we get through adolescence, we develop a sense of agency. We're still playing our roles, but we're starting to realize that we've got those free traits that we can explore, and that's how we decide who we're going to become. And then the more actualized later stage of that is author. When you realize that, yes, I am the protagonist of this story, I am the hero, but I'm also writing the story. I can't control it completely, but I can certainly influence it. And I make this point to avoid the tyranny of should. Anytime you hear yourself think or say, I should, try I want. Because is this you wanting to do this, or is this your mother or your father or your peers or some industry expert that you're trying to live up to, or is it your story that you're writing? You're not going to be happy living someone else's story or letting someone else write your story for you. All right, 9 days, 21 hours, and 51 minutes. Can anyone guess what this is? This is the new record set this summer by a 40-year-old guy from Denver for climbing all 58 14ers. Can you imagine that? That's 6 big old mountains a day, every day for 10 days. It just amazes me what human beings can do, right? And yet, should I measure myself against this guy in my goal to climb all 58? No, that would be ridiculous. And I'm using this example to drive home a point because this one is so obvious, and yet some of you out there are measuring yourself against Travis, what's his name at Uber, or Dharmesh Shah of HubSpot, or even me. We're writing our own stories for our own reasons and our own processes with our own goals in mind. This is really the point. Never compare your inside to someone else's outside. You have no idea why I'm at this temporary rest stop in my life, but it's irrelevant other than can you learn something from Dharmesh or I? Sure. But what do you really want to do? Don't use me as your measuring stick. Your journey is your own. So this quote really sums up the entire talk. It's one of my favorites. Happiness is a way of travel, not a destination. There is no place called happiness. Happiness is in the doing, the process. So choose what you do carefully because that's who you're going to be. Now, are there rest stops on the journey? Absolutely. One of the most important things you can do to increase your happiness is practice gratitude. Every night before I go to bed, I have a very simple gratitude exercise where I am thankful for the core things: roof over the head, warm bed, loved ones safe and nearby. Sleep like a baby. I used to have insomnia for years. And then, of course, you're going to have milestones, longer rest stops, where you've achieved what you sought out to achieve. Celebrate, revel, yes, absolutely. But when the time comes, and it will, keep going. Thank you very much.